Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today in this video I'm going to be giving you tips and tricks about how to get interesting textures and lighting effects using a watercolor and ink, my two favorite mediums right now. Ink has been a long time favorite of mine, and watercolor I've been getting into recently. So yeah, to give you these tips and these more practical advices in a way that's not really that much used in that platform on the, cliche tutorial videos, I'm gonna actually take you through the process of making a full artwork that I think turned out really good. Let's not waste any more of your time and get into inking and coloring this little goblin sketch right here. You ready? Let's do this. Starting off with this piece with my beautiful dip pens, I just do the foreground element first because it's going to be the main attraction of the piece, the face of the goblin. First tip, you've already heard it, but I'm going to tell it again because it's very important. Use line weight variation on your foreground elements. This is a very important tip to differentiate them from the background elements. And look at this. I'm doing the background bottles right here, and you can really see the differentiation with the face of the goblin right from the start. The dip pens that I use are a really great way to have a lot of fun because they're so satisfying getting this line weight variation under control. Right here on the shield you can see a couple of textural marks. These are going to be very important in the future. Use textural marks before going in with the hatching to give the character of the element you're doing. This is another very important tip for inks. Because I just see so many people just going in a hatching, and while it can look very detailed and cool, it doesn't look that much textured, and the differentiation of the textures especially suffers from it. There we go, the real foreground elements here, the little chest, that could be a bit of a storytelling element along with the mug, #OneDad. I just think it's really funny, and you could make up a lot of stories however you want about this character with these two elements basically. I think it's pretty cool. Here I had a couple of other textural marks on the eyebrows to make them look really hairy, with just messy strokes all over the place. And also a couple of other textural marks on the skin to make him look aged and old before going in, with the main shadows that I completely black out with a brush. I had already outlined some of them, so it's pretty easy to add them, and it's very important to give the depth that you're looking for before complementing the whole shading thing with your watercolors. Here I just add the start of the outline of the stones that are going to be in the wall behind him. I don't put stones everywhere, just put in some strategic places for the composition to make the whole wall behind him look like it's made out of stone. I also, in the wooden areas, use my brush to differentiate the different blanks to really give depth to all these elements, to make them look like just a flat wooden thing. There are different blanks that are put together. And it's really important to indicate that to really get the different textures and lighting effects we're talking about in this video to look really good. Speaking of textures, I'm here outlining the different stones and starting the hatching on them. So for the hatching, the real thing that's going to differentiate are two main elements: your line quality and your line direction, and also the number of layers that you put in. As you can see, I just have a single layer on the stones. The direction varies and goes kind of towards the light source, and the line quality is simply two lines with the white part in the middle that go from thick to thin very distinctively. That is a very nice texture for stones, I feel like, and really differentiates it from the other elements, especially from the more alive stuff like wood and the goblin. I start by hatching with 4 layers and really consistent lines underneath the shelves, but later I'm just gonna black it out because it looks a lot better and just makes more sense with the lighting effects that I'm looking for. Here, as you can see, the differentiation and the hatching is really coming together. I'm going with 3 and then a slight 4th layer of cross hatching on the wooden parts. So the 4th layer is actually just some messy lines to give the texture, and that really makes a lot of difference with the cleanness of the stones that are behind them and just make it look woody and messy and alive, basically. Remember that, use different line qualities and go layer by layer when you're cross hatching. Some people just get tempted to get all of the hatches and cross hatches on one area and then move on. No. Go layer by layer and build up the entire thing at once. It's gonna look a lot better. Thereafter, going a little bit of clean hatching just to indicate the shape of the jaw of the character, I just move on with the hatching of the planks that are right in front of him. Look at this, it's a very similar thing that what I did on the other wooden parts and really makes them look coherent, and it's very good for the overall composition and just the appeal of the piece. On the mug, the texture that I add with the hatching is very simple. It's a mug, it's supposed to be a simple texture, just some lines go from thick to thin with a slight curve to indicate the roundness of it. And on the goblin, the line quality is a little bit different. It's still a little bit of a slight curve, a pretty thick lines that go a little bit thinner on the end, and only 2 layers, 3 on some places. This really indicates the sort of old skin that I'm going for. And makes it pop, because it's right in the middle, it has a different texture, it's really nice. Same thing for the planks, just nice textural marks, and a bit of pointillism, I think that's how you say it, on the welcome sign, to really differentiate it from the rest, because it's not wood, it's not skin, it's not stone, it's just paper. I think pointillism is a really good technique for paper in general, and just, yeah, there you go, I'm blacking out the shadow underneath the shelves, because it just makes a ton more sense with the lighting. And here we go, the last step of the inking process. Just take your white out and correct your mistakes, and also add a couple of other textures that I already talked about in the last video. You can check it out. I talked about it in a little bit more detail, but here I basically add a couple of interesting textures on the shield and especially on the raven. I think that's how you say it. That's a raven, right? Yeah, let's just say it's a raven. And there you go for the ink reveal. Yeah, there it is. To start off the coloring process, I actually use some watercolor pencils. I think each watercolor painter who should have these by hand, even just to do this technique, add some stuff before you go in with your paint to simply differentiate the highlights with a more sort of green that has more yellow in it, and put some brown, in this case, in the hatched shadow areas to really give depth to the whole thing, and then I go back again with a nice highlight tone that has more yellow in it. This is a really nice way to build up your colors before going in with the paint. I think every watercolor painter should do that. Keep that in mind. This is a really just nice additional step to your color building process. You can see I use it again on the little different wooden parts. I add, in the case of the big plants, a very hot color and then go with a lot of small strokes to give that brushy textures that really make it look like blanks. I just keep going at the texturing that I already did with the inks. For the shield, I add more hot colors to differentiate it from the rest of the wooden elements. The welcome sign, just a little bit of yellowish brown. And a bit of yellow on the highlights of the sword, because it's metal, it really reflects the light a lot. These watercolor pencils are so useful just to get a pretty flat color if I want, or to just start the color building process, or oppositely, get a really specific texture. The last 3 wooden elements are basically made in the same way that really makes them look coherent with one another and works a lot in the favor of the composition of the image to center your attention on the goblin. I think it's a really nice effect. Keep that in mind when shading and doing different tones. Think about the composition you're looking for. And there you go, just keep building up the tones of the goblin. I add a little bit of a brown tone in the shadows, and also I'll add later a bit of yellow in the highlights because it's green, so yellow in the highlights makes sense. Really keep that in mind when doing watercolor. Build up your tones as you go. In this case, I let it dry before going in with a highlight and shadow because they're transparent, they're not opaque, so you can do that, but you can also not let it dry like I'm going to talk about later. Hey, I just start off the final shading element, the wall that's behind it, is really going to make the different shaded elements that are just shaded individually come together in a very coherent way. And that's actually incredibly important. As you can see, I just build up with the grays, the different tones that go further away from the light, and the individual shadows of the little objects to really make the central light source pop. And look at this magic. I told you, these are magic pencils. Look at this. I just start off with the darkest areas, so the shadows of the individual objects that don't really need solid black shadows, and then start off with the darkest areas. The effect is really starting to come into play here. It will start to look really really nice and have this strong one light source effect that I was looking for. Right now, some areas don't really look dark enough, so what I'm gonna do is add some black paint in it. Other tip, if you want to build up this kind of tones, don't let the area you're working with dry. Because if it's dry, it's just gonna lay on top, and while it can look cool, like on the skin of the goblin, is gonna give you a hard edge, and it might have some cool textures, but here I just want not these cool textures, and I'm not letting it dry and building up the tones as they go. And this is a really, really good thing that you can do on most situations. I feel like you're gonna be doing this most of the time with watercolors. And there it is, just to finish off this piece. After blending the yellow of the candles around to give that lighting effect, I add a little bit of blue on the goblin's suit to make him sort of more central element. Add a couple details for the final reveal. Well, that's it guys, the final result is right here. And that's really nice. I'm really proud about this artwork. To be honest, I think it's really good, and it really shows my progress in watercolor, and just my experience in inking in general. And I hope you enjoyed the process of watching me do it, and take the advice into account as much as I enjoyed doing it. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I'm really soon going to start offering commissions. Like, at the time I'm recording this video, my website isn't ready yet, but if it is by the time I upload the video, the link would be the top link in the description. You can check it out if you want. If you don't, whatever, welcome to the community. I'm really glad to have you here, and to have you enjoy the videos that I put out, even though for now they're kinda trash. I'm just experimenting around with different formats to see what suits me better, you know? And just build my identity on YouTube to be able to then grow a successful channel and build the community that I really want to build. And you're a part of it right now, and I really want to thank you for this. So yeah, keep on improving and have a very pleasant rest of your day. Peace.